It's the conclusion to season 2. It's also the conclusion to seasons 1 and 2.
I didn't expect to feel like a spiritual pain today, but I'm feeling it now.
Tom Hiddleston just detonated Disney's spotless image with one brutal sentence, and fans are scrambling to understand why. This isn't just about Loki being gone. It's about identity theft, exploitation, and a quiet rebellion inside Marvel. But the most shocking part? He wasn't the only one ready to walk. The day Tom Hiddleston snapped, they didn't expect him to talk. Not like this, not ever like this. Tom Hiddleston, the refined, Oxford-educated actor beloved across the globe for his nuanced portrayal of Loki, just lit a fuse that could set the entire Disney machine on fire. In seconds, a man once celebrated for playing a trickster god became the trickster in real life, turning on his handlers in a moment of raw, unfiltered rebellion. You see, the story that Disney and their legion of PR experts want you to believe is a simple one, a neat one, a tidy one. They want you to think that Loki Season 2 was always meant to be the end, a planned conclusion to a sprawling story. They want you to see Tom's emotional farewell as a fond adieu, a bittersweet but happy ending to a long and fruitful partnership. But that story, like so many out of Hollywood's power corridors, is a carefully constructed fiction. The reality is messier, more painful, and reveals a disturbing pattern. A company that sees its talented actors not as creative partners, but as disposable assets. The most shocking part isn't just that he walked away, but how he was driven to that point. A point of such profound exhaustion that he felt he had no choice but to sever ties completely. Honestly, Tom didn't walk away because he wanted to. He walked away because, after nearly a decade and a half serving a faceless, profit-hungry corporation, he realized something deeply disturbing. Disney no longer cared about the character. Not the way he did. Not the way the fans did. Not in a way that respected the nuance, the mythology, or even the actor behind it. The first public cracks in the polished facade appeared during his promotional tour for the final season of Loki. He appeared on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and on the surface, it was everything you'd expect. Witty banter, charming anecdotes, and praise for the show. But if you were watching closely, if you understood the pressure, you saw something else. A weariness. A sense of finality that went far beyond a project wrap. When Fallon asked about the finale, Hiddleston's words were incredibly telling.
The conclusion to season 2, it's also the conclusion to seasons 1 and 2. It's also the conclusion to 6 films and 12 episodes and 14 years of my life.
14 years. And if that sounds like emotional closure, it wasn't. On the surface, it was a poignant reflection, but sources close to production say it was calculated, not nostalgic, a public declaration of an ending he chose, not the studio. Disney, you see, had no intention of letting their most popular villain go. Leaks suggested plans for a 3rd season and key roles in Deadpool 3 and Avengers: Secret Wars. They saw Loki not as a character with a finite arc, but as a golden goose they could keep squeezing until it stopped laying eggs. That statement on Fallon was his shot across the bow, a message to the world and to Disney. His journey was over, like it or not. The emotional toll of this 14-year-long journey became clearer elsewhere. On the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, host Josh Horowitz put him through a lighthearted game. Choose his favorite role from his filmography. But the game turned into a heartbreakingly revealing moment. As he picked between passion projects, like I Saw the Light, and corporate juggernauts, the pain was visible. Now, don't get us wrong, vulnerability is powerful. But when you see the full pattern, it starts to feel sterilized, manufactured. Perhaps that's what he was really reacting to, the slow erasure of the character he brought to life. It wasn't just about choosing between roles. It was about choosing between art and obligation. When he had to choose, his voice cracked.
I didn't expect to feel like a spiritual pain today, but I'm feeling it now.
Spiritual pain. Let that sink in. This wasn't about picking a favorite film. It was a man confronting the gap between the artist he wanted to be and the brand Disney forced him to become. The interviewer tried to lighten the mood, but the moment stuck. He ultimately chose Loki over I Saw the Light, but his explanation said everything.
I had to say Loki because I just poured my heart and soul into that show. And it's sort of like where I always wanted to get to, and where I sometimes didn't dare to dream I would be allowed to get to.
Allowed to get to, not achieved, not earned, allowed. He wasn't talking about dreams. He was talking about limits, what the system permitted. He'd reached the pinnacle of what Disney allowed, and in doing so, sacrificed a part of his artistic soul. The interview revealed a man no longer in control. Not just Tom Hiddleston, RADA-trained actor, but Tom, face of a multi-billion-dollar IP, and the weight of that was crushing. This kind of pressure isn't new for Disney stars. Tom's quiet rebellion is just the latest chapter. Disney has a history of treating stars as cogs cogs in a machine, disposable and subservient to profit. Think about the original Avengers, the foundation of the MCU. Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans made grand exits in Endgame, sold as narrative closure. But in hindsight, maybe it was escape. Less about the story, more about survival, a desperate break from the machine. And then came the most public fallout: Scarlett Johansson's 2021 lawsuit. After a decade of loyalty, she was promised a theatrical release for Black Widow, her salary tied to box office performance. Instead, Disney dumped it on Disney Plus simultaneously, cutting her revenue and boosting their streaming numbers. When she sued, Disney retaliated, painting her as greedy and out of touch. They didn't just defend themselves, they attacked her, publicly shaming a woman who had carried the franchise for years. It was a message: challenge us and we'll humiliate you. Loyalty to Disney is a one-way street. They demand it, rarely reciprocate it. This is the environment Tom found himself in. He saw how they treated Scarlett, saw his co-stars fleeing, and he knew, stay, and the same fate awaited him. To Disney, Loki was the next tentpole, the next decade of spin-offs, cameos, and TV series. But to Tom, it was a trap. He saw a future where he'd still be playing Loki at 50, ambition withering, life no longer his. He realized the only way to give Loki a glorious purpose was to give him a real, definitive ending. And now, in 2025, that absence finally makes sense. Disney hijacked his identity. Let's not kid ourselves. Disney doesn't just create stories, it manufactures personas. The smiles, the Instagram-ready behind-the-scenes footage, the late-night talk show appearances, they're part of a much larger ecosystem designed not to reveal its actors, but to brand them. And Tom Hiddleston? For years, he was the perfect cog in that system. Elegant, polite, thoughtful, almost surgically non-controversial. The press called him Shakespearean. Fans called him charming. But behind the curtain, something much darker was happening, something Hiddleston couldn't talk about publicly, even as it was quietly reshaping how the world saw him. Because the truth is, Disney didn't just hire Tom Hiddleston to play Loki. They owned Tom Hiddleston. To understand how deep the manipulation went, you need to rewind to the summer of 2016, when a seemingly harmless photograph of Hiddleston wearing a tank top that read, "I love Taylor Swift," exploded across tabloids worldwide. At the time, the message was framed as cute, playful, just a guy celebrating his relationship with Taylor Swift. Except it wasn't. In fact, Hiddleston would later confirm that the photo was taken without his consent and weaponized by the media to fuel a fake PR narrative. The tank top became an emblem of this thing. I was just surprised that it got so much attention. It was a joke among friends, but the damage had already been done. That one photo turned Hiddleston's brand, once respected and serious, into a late-night punchline. Suddenly, the British thespian was reduced to tabloid fodder. Memes, think pieces, mockery. The idea that his romance with Swift was a publicity stunt became the dominant narrative. Even though Hiddleston insisted it was real, the internet had already made up its mind, and he had to adopt the right headspace to handle such critics. I have to be so psychologically strong about not letting other people's interpretations about my life affect my life. And what did Disney do during this PR firestorm? Absolutely nothing. They didn't protect him, they didn't correct the narrative, because, and this is the part nobody wants to say out loud, the scandal benefited them. It drew attention, clicks, relevance. Hiddleston was no longer just a character actor, he was a headline, and that made him more marketable. For Disney, it was a win. For Hiddleston, it was a betrayal. In the years that followed, Hiddleston pulled back. Fewer interviews, more scripted soundbites, and every public appearance, from Comic-Con panels to late-night shows, began to feel like it was choreographed by a team of brand managers, not driven by the actor himself. He didn't just play Loki anymore. He was Loki. That was the role the corporation had decided for him, even when he was off the clock. So when he finally said Loki was his ride or die, it didn't just come from love, it came from survival.
Companion, he's my, he's my other self.
He's your ride or die.
He's my ride or die. I love that guy.
That was real. That was the human being behind the marketing. And what do you do when the company that owns your character also starts trying to own your identity? You fight back, or you walk away. But there's another layer to this story, one that's both more uncomfortable and more revealing: the issue of masculinity. As Loki Season 2 wrapped and fan discussions exploded online, a strange narrative began to take shape. Hiddleston wasn't man enough for the role anymore. This wasn't an isolated opinion. Across Reddit threads and X, formerly Twitter posts, fans debated his physique, his vulnerability, even his mannerisms. Some said he lacked presence. Others mocked his twink energy. One particularly vicious review compared his masculinity to that of Graham Norton, a comment that left even Samuel L. Jackson reeling. Besides that, there was another uncomfortable issue: the bizarre proliferation of fan art depicting Loki as a pole dancer, which originated from a single acrobatic move in the first Thor film, was a perfect example. Fans saw a playful, androgynous, and subversive energy in him that they loved, but it was an energy that the studio seemed determined to sanitize and control, Hiddleston was caught in a bizarre tug-of-war between the fans who wanted him to be wild and unpredictable, the studio that wanted him to be a safe and marketable commodity, and his own desire to be a serious, respected actor. It was an impossible position to be in. The charm, the wit, the smile, it was all a mask, a performance he had to maintain for the cameras. But behind it, a deep resentment was festering. He was tired of being the good soldier. He was tired of the humiliations, both big and small. He was tired of being a product. He was ready to fight back, and the final season of Loki would become his battleground. But let's be clear, these criticisms weren't rooted in his acting. They were rooted in expectations, the kind of expectations Disney helped create, then weaponized. You see, Disney had a dilemma. Loki was written as gender fluid, queer-coded, deeply emotional, and Hiddleston leaned into that with grace and intelligence. He spoke openly about Loki's identity being wide-ranging and uncontainable. Loki, as a character, has had such a broad and wide-ranging identity. He's always been a character that you could never put in a box, that you could never pin down, and I was really pleased that we were able to touch on that in the series. But while Disney publicly supported this representation, insiders suggest they privately softened it. Loki's queerness was hinted at, but never explored. His relationships remained ambiguous. His emotional vulnerability was used as character development, but never allowed to exist without self-deprecating humor or philosophical detours. Why? Because Disney wanted to have it both ways. They wanted the progressive applause, without risking the conservative backlash. They wanted the Tumblr fan art, without alienating their base in Middle America. So they sanitized it, polished it, stripped it of its bite. And Hiddleston, he played along until he didn't. The aftermath of this quiet coup has been fascinating to watch. During his final promotional interviews, Hiddleston was repeatedly asked about the future. Would he show up in Deadpool 3? Could he use his newfound time-slipping powers to bring back Tony Stark? These were the questions the fans, and by extension the studio, wanted answered. His responses were a masterclass in polite, diplomatic evasion. When Jimmy Fallon pressed him on a potential connection to Deadpool 3, Hiddleston deflected with a joke about Ryan Reynolds owning a soccer team.
I know that Ryan Reynolds he owns a football team in the UK? Soccer team?
No, that's not what we asked.
When asked if he could bring back Iron Man, he gave a vague, philosophical answer about the nature of time and death in the MCU, saying,
Know that I can time slip. I don't know that other characters can time slip. Speaking for myself, Loki's died a few times, come back, I'm still here, so I don't know that that death is necessarily. I mean, death is up for grabs as an existential question.
At the time, it seemed like typical Marvel secrecy, but in retrospect, it was clear he was in an impossible position. He couldn't lie and say yes because he knew he was done, but he also couldn't say no because that would mean openly defying the studio and confirming the behind-the-scenes turmoil. So he danced, he dodged, he deflected. He knew the truth. There were no future plans because he had canceled them. By mid-2024, something had clearly shifted. Tom Hiddleston started turning down press requests. He stopped attending Marvel events. His name was noticeably absent from new Phase 6 lineups, and fans began asking the question, where's Loki? Even as other actors, like Chris Hemsworth, Jeremy Renner, and Elizabeth Olsen, were either exiting or renegotiating, Hiddleston remained a ghost. The Loki Season 2 ending, once hailed as definitive, now felt eerily like a burial. It was around this time that the rumors first appeared. Unfortunately, no one could verify them. But it didn't matter. The phrase fit. It fit the growing silence. It fit the unexplained cancellation of Season 3. It fit the fans' frustration. It fit the way Hiddleston now avoided all Disney-affiliated projects. And most damning of all, it fit the timeline. Because according to industry insiders, Disney did have plans for more Loki content, not just in the form of a third season, but cameos in Deadpool 3, Avengers, Secret Wars, and even promotional tie-ins for multiverse projects. But at some point in early 2024, everything was scrapped, gone. No press release, no replacement actor, just nothing. And that's when we started to see the cracks in the narrative Disney had spent a decade building. Because if Hiddleston's departure was always the plan, why didn't they promote it? Why not give him the Iron Man send-off? The Captain America curtain call? Why bury it in silence? Unless they were hiding something. The MCU is cracking. The truth is, this was never just about Tom Hiddleston. This wasn't about a single actor walking away from a single role. This was about the system behind the curtain, the empire Disney built, and what happens when one of its most loyal subjects decides to burn his contract in the town square. Because now, as we dig deeper into how Disney controls its talent, it becomes horrifyingly clear. Tom Hiddleston wasn't the first to walk. He was just the first to say it out loud. And when he did, the ripples stretched all the way to the upper floors of Marvel Studios. Meetings were suddenly restructured, contracts contracts redrafted. Even fan events, once reliably stacked with talent, became suspiciously thin on legacy stars. Something had changed. Let's talk about what they were hiding. Actors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe aren't just signing on for a film or a series. They're signing away control of their image for years. And in Tom Hiddleston's case, that meant mandatory interviews with scripted talking points, appearance coordination down to the outfit and haircut, off-limits topics enforced by PR handlers, digital likeness licensing, allowing Disney to use CGI versions of the actor even after their exit. This isn't a theory. It's buried in the fine print of Marvel's long-term contracts, many of which evolved during Phase 3 and beyond, as Disney became increasingly obsessed with controlling everything. In fact, a 2023 feature from Business Insider revealed that Marvel talent are often barred from working with competing franchises, even on unrelated genres, unless the role is pre-approved by Disney's legal team. That includes TV, theater, indie projects, even voice acting in some cases. Tom Hiddleston, an actor trained on Shakespeare, suddenly found himself boxed into a genre he never expected to spend over a decade in. And as that creative tension mounted, Disney's grip only got tighter. But if you think this is just about contracts, think again. Hiddleston's quiet, dignified exit stands in stark contrast to the more explosive departures and disputes that have plagued Disney in recent years. But it is no less significant. It is part of a growing wave of artists who are pushing back against the studio's controlling and often callous practices. Look no further than the case of Gina Carano, who was unceremoniously fired from The Mandalorian for her controversial social media posts. Whether you agree with her politics or not, she is now suing Disney for wrongful termination, alleging that the company discriminates against employees who don't toe the corporate-approved ideological line. Her lawsuit, which Elon Musk is audaciously funding, is another high-profile challenge to Disney's power. It's a different kind of fight than Hiddleston's, but it comes from the same place, a feeling that the company demands absolute conformity and will punish anyone who steps out of line. Hiddleston didn't file a lawsuit. He didn't issue a press release. Instead, he used the narrative of his own show as his weapon. He fought his battle creatively, embedding his rebellion into the very fabric of the story. It was a subtle, brilliant, and deeply personal way of winning his freedom. Loki was always meant to be different, queer-coded, unpredictable, neither hero nor villain. That's what made the character legendary. And Hiddleston, more than any other actor, embraced that complexity. He leaned into Loki's androgyny, his emotional intelligence, his chaos. But behind the scenes, some fans, and possibly some executives, weren't thrilled. And was Disney starting to listen to the trolls? The show's tone changed subtly but noticeably. By the finale, the chaos was gone. Loki had become a self-sacrificing, world-weary sage. Gone were the unpredictable mood swings. Gone was the subversive gender play. Instead, the final image of Loki was a god sitting alone, burdened by destiny, quiet, reined in, tamed. And to some fans, especially queer fans, it felt like betrayal. Was this growth for Loki, or was it compliance? You see, Tom Hiddleston and Gina Carano aren't the only ones who grew disillusioned. A string of other stars have now quietly exited the MCU, many under ambiguous terms. Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, severed ties after her lawsuit. Elizabeth Olsen, Wanda, publicly questioned her story arc. Dave Bautista, Drax, called his Disney experience a perfect end, but said he wouldn't return even for money. Jeremy Renner, Hawkeye, reportedly turned down Hawkeye Season 2 due to burnout and Disney's expectations. And now, even long-term fixtures like Chris Hemsworth are either stepping back or voicing fatigue. What do all these departures have in common? They're framed as natural conclusions, but behind the scenes, each one is tied to growing unrest with the way Disney handles its actors, both artistically and professionally. Tom Hiddleston wasn't a fluke. He was the canary in the coal mine, and it wasn't just about him, it was about everyone. Let's be brutally honest here. There's no official record of Tom Hiddleston saying those words on camera, no Disney Plus press release confirming his exit, no Variety exclusive breaking the real reason for Loki's absence in Phase 6. But that's exactly the point. This wasn't a scripted exit. This was a quiet rebellion, and the industry knows it, because for the first time in over a decade, Disney lost control of one of its most valuable characters, not to death or contracts or story arcs, but to conscience. Tom Hiddleston realized something most actors in Hollywood only come to understand after it's too late. When you work for Disney long enough, you don't just lose creative freedom, you lose yourself. And so he walked, silently, firmly, refusing to play the good soldier, because maybe the most Loki thing he ever did was finally saying no. So what does the future hold for Tom Hiddleston? For the first time in 14 years, it is entirely his own. He is free to pursue the passion projects he so clearly yearns for. He can return to the stage. He can take on complex, challenging roles in independent films. He can remind the world that he is more than just Loki. He is an artist, and he has finally reclaimed his canvas. His journey is a powerful, cautionary tale for any young actor dreaming of Hollywood stardom. It's a reminder that fame and fortune often often come with a heavy price, and that true success is not measured in box office numbers or franchise longevity, but in the ability to stay true to your own glorious purpose. Tom Hiddleston looked into the abyss of endless, soul-crushing franchise work, and he chose to walk away. He chose art over commerce. He chose integrity over obligation. He chose himself. And in doing so, he gave Loki the one thing the god of mischief always craved, but could never seem to find: a truly meaningful end. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
A full-scale rebellion is brewing behind the scenes at Marvel as stars declare war on Disney CEO Bob Iger. Jeremy Renner's explosive rejection of Disney's insult offer is just the beginning.
I'm like, wow, it's going to take me twice the amount of work for half the amount of money.
Meanwhile, other MCU stars are joining the revolution, publicly condemning Iger's leadership.
There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic.
The shocking secret meetings, career-ending threats, and the 3 A-list stars ready to walk away forever. This is the Marvel Civil War they don't want you to know about. The shocking revelation: Jeremy Renner's insulting offer. In early May 2025, during an interview with the High Performance app that was shared on TikTok, Renner made the jaw-dropping claim that Disney had offered him only half of his previous salary for a potential second season of the Disney Plus series Hawkeye. This revelation, documented across multiple entertainment news outlets including Hindustan Times, IndieWire, and People, came as a particular shock considering Renner's long-standing position as one of the original Avengers and his significant contribution to the Marvel Cinematic Universe over more than a decade. What makes the situation even more remarkable is the timing and context surrounding Disney's offer. As many of you will recall, Jeremy Renner suffered a near-fatal snowplow accident on New Year's Day 2023, resulting in over 35 broken bones and multiple titanium replacements. The actor endured a grueling rehabilitation journey, which he later detailed in his memoir, My Next Breath, released on April 29, 2024. It was against this backdrop of recovery and resilience that Renner claims Disney approached him with the reduced salary offer. In his own words during the High Performance interview, Renner expressed his disbelief at the proposal.
I'm like, I'm sorry. Why? Did you think I'm only half the Jeremy because I got ran over? Maybe that's why you want to pay me half?
The actor's pointed reference to his accident adds a particularly poignant dimension to this dispute, suggesting he felt the offer might have been connected to perceptions about his physical capabilities post-recovery. Adding insult to injury, according to Renner, this halved salary was proposed despite expectations for twice the amount of work and an 8-month time commitment for the second season. The stark contrast between increased workload and decreased compensation left the actor feeling that he had no choice but to decline the offer. It's worth noting that Renner was careful to distinguish between Disney's financial department and Marvel Studios in his criticism. This is not Marvel, mind you. This is like just Disney, not even really Disney. It's just the penny pinchers, the accountants, he clarified. This distinction suggests Renner's issue is specifically with the business side of operations, rather than the creative team with whom he's collaborated for years. The actor's response to the offer was unequivocal. He rejected it outright, telling Disney's financial team to go fly a kite, as he colorfully phrased it. Despite this strong stance, Renner emphasized that his love for the Hawkeye character remains unchanged. I still love the character. I'd still love to do it, but I had to defend myself. What makes this situation particularly interesting is that it's not an isolated incident. Industry observers have noted similar patterns with other actors. John Malkovich, who is set to appear in the Fantastic Four First Steps 2025, revealed he had previously turned down Marvel roles for years due to what he perceived as insufficient pay for the demanding nature of superhero productions. If you're going to hang from a crane in front of a green screen for 6 months, pay me, Malkovich stated, highlighting the physical and time demands these roles often entail. Additionally, reports have suggested that other actors like Hugo Weaving, who played Red Skull, and Carrie Coon have also walked away from Marvel roles over what they considered lowball offers, though specific details of these negotiations remain less public. To fully appreciate the context of Renner's situation, it's important to consider the typical compensation structure for MCU stars. Top earners like Robert Downey Jr. reportedly received around $75 million for Avengers Endgame, while Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson have commanded approximately $20 million per film in recent years. These figures have been widely reported in industry publications, creating a stark contrast with Renner's reported offer. For his part, Renner's MCU earnings have reportedly ranged from $3 million to $15 million for previous films, making the alleged pay cut for Hawkeye Season 2 all the more dramatic. While exact figures for his Season 1 compensation haven't been publicly disclosed, Industry estimates suggest the proposed reduction would represent a significant financial step backward for the actor. This controversy has certainly caught the attention of fans, many of whom have expressed strong support for Renner on social media platforms. On X, formerly Twitter, posts expressing disappointment with Marvel's decision have gained significant traction. One notable comment urged, "Pay that man his money," while another user criticized Marvel directly, "Hey, at Marvel Studios, that's messed up, no? Maybe next time you cannot insult one of your original and longest-lasting cast members in a time when you're not exactly lighting the world on fire." Particularly noteworthy is how fans have connected Renner's situation to his personal challenges following the accident. The sentiment that Disney should be more considerate given his recovery journey has resonated strongly within the fan community, with some expressing that the offer feels particularly callous in light of what the actor has endured. Some fans have even speculated about potential future negotiations, with one commenting, "After the reveal and Thunderbolts, and Haley using her new leverage after Hash Sinners, he'll get paid." This references Haley Steinfeld's rising star power following her success in projects outside the MCU, suggesting her increased leverage might indirectly benefit Renner in future discussions. Disney, for their part, has remained relatively quiet about the specific details of the negotiation. An unnamed Disney insider cited by IndieWire disputed Renner's claims, but notably failed to provide specific details to counter his statements. This lack of transparency has only fueled further speculation about the nature of the offer and Disney's approach to talent compensation more broadly. The situation raises important questions about how actors are valued in an era of expanding streaming content and changing business models. For a character like Hawkeye, who has been part of the MCU since nearly the beginning, fans might reasonably expect compensation to reflect that long-standing contribution to the franchise's success. Adding another layer to this already complex situation is Renner's potential involvement in future MCU projects beyond Hawkeye. Despite the salary dispute, there have been indications that Renner might return as Hawkeye in Avengers Doomsday, scheduled for release on May 1st, 2026. In an August 2024 interview, Renner hinted at his involvement, stating he is really excited and thinks he'll probably be doing it. This suggests that while the Hawkeye series negotiations have reached an impasse, doors remain open for Renner's return in other capacities. Production on Avengers Doomsday reportedly began in April 2025, with a cast including Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm Invisible Woman, and Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Captain America, among others. So what does the future hold for Hawkeye in the MCU if Jeremy Renner were to permanently step away? The most likely scenario would see Kate Bishop, played by Haley Steinfeld, continuing the Hawkeye legacy. The Hawkeye series already established her as Clint Barton's protege, creating a natural transition path. Marvel could focus on developing new storylines for Kate, possibly incorporating her into projects like Young Avengers, which has been rumored to be in development. Such a transition would align with Marvel's broader strategy of introducing younger heroes and passing mantles to new characters, as seen with Anthony Mackie taking over as Captain America from Chris Evans. However, Renner's departure would unquestionably represent a significant loss for the franchise, given his long tenure and the fan attachment to his portrayal. As we continue to monitor this developing story, it's clear that the relationship between major studios and their talent remains a delicate balance of creative partnership and business negotiation. A pattern emerges: Marvel's history of financial disputes with stars. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has generated unprecedented box office success over its nearly two-decade existence, has not been immune to behind-the-scenes financial conflicts. In fact, a careful examination of the franchise's history reveals that Jeremy Renner's situation, while certainly dramatic, follows a well-established pattern of salary disputes that have periodically threatened to disrupt the carefully constructed MCU narrative. Perhaps the most famous or infamous early example of such a dispute involved Terrence Howard, who portrayed James Rhodes, later War Machine, in the original Iron Man 2008. What many casual fans may not realize is that Howard was initially paid more than Robert Downey Jr. for the first film, a reflection of Howard's star power at the time, and the perceived risk associated with casting Downey, who was then in the process of rebuilding his career. However, following the unexpected mega success of Iron Man, Howard's compensation was significantly reduced for future projects, reportedly due to budget reallocations that favored increasing Downey's salary. This dramatic pay cut ultimately led to Howard's departure from the franchise, with Don Cheadle stepping in to take over the role of James Rhodes' War Machine for Iron Man 2 and all subsequent appearances. Howard has been vocal about his frustration with this situation over the years, making it clear that financial considerations played a major role in his exit from what would become one of cinema's most successful franchises. This early instance set a precedent that we would see repeated in various forms throughout the MCU's evolution. Another high-profile dispute that captivated industry attention involved Scarlett Johansson, who had been portraying Natasha Romanoff Black Widow since Iron Man 2. In July 2021, Johansson took the extraordinary step of filing a lawsuit against Disney, alleging breach of contract related to the release strategy for her solo film Black Widow. At the heart of Johansson's claim was the decision to release Black Widow simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access during the COVID-19 pandemic. The actress alleged this dual release strategy reduced box office revenue, which directly impacted her back-end compensation package that was tied to theatrical performance. Reports suggested Johansson sought approximately $80 million in damages on top of her $20 million base salary for the film. The dispute was ultimately settled in October 2021, with the terms undisclosed but estimated by industry insiders to exceed $40 million. While the specific circumstances of Johansson's case differ from Renner's current situation, both illustrate the ongoing tension between talent compensation and evolving business models in the entertainment industry, particularly as streaming has disrupted traditional revenue streams. Perhaps the most directly comparable precedent to the current Renner situation occurred following the monumental success of The Avengers 2012, which grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide and cemented the MCU as a box office juggernaut. Reports from 2013 indicated that several key Avengers actors, including Chris Hemsworth, Thor, and Chris Evans, Captain America, found themselves in contentious negotiations with Marvel over compensation for future appearances. These actors had signed what were later characterized as ungenerous contracts early in the MCU's development before its financial success was assured. As the franchise grew exponentially in value, negotiations became increasingly tense. Marvel reportedly offered to triple Chris Hemsworth's contract, though they were not contractually obligated to do so in recognition of his growing importance to the franchise. Robert Downey Jr., who had shrewdly negotiated a percentage of profits rather than just a flat fee for his later appearances, leveraged his position as the MCU's center of gravity to secure increasingly substantial deals, reportedly earning around $75 million for Avengers Endgame, a far cry from the $500,000 he reportedly received for the first Iron Man film. These historical disputes highlight a recurring pattern in Marvel's approach to talent compensation. Initial contracts tend to favor the studio, with renegotiations becoming necessary as the franchise's success grows and actors gain leverage. The frequency of these disputes suggests a systematic approach to talent management that prioritizes controlling costs even as the overall franchise generates extraordinary revenues. But financial tensions within the MCU extend beyond just the major stars. Recent controversies have involved actors who, while not headlining their own films, have played crucial supporting roles in the franchise. For instance, reports emerged in 2025 that Carrie Coon had declined to return to the MCU over a salary dispute, though specific details remained private. Similarly, Hugo Weaving, who memorably portrayed the Red Skull in Captain America: The First Avenger, did not return for subsequent appearances, with financial considerations reportedly playing a role in that decision. The situation becomes even more complex when examining how Marvel's strategy has evolved in more recent phases of the MCU. Industry reports suggest that for Phase 4 and beyond, Marvel aimed to decrease tentpole actor salaries, part of a broader strategy emphasizing character brands rather than star power. This approach reportedly resulted in lower salaries for actors like Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie, and Richard Madden compared to what earlier MCU stars had commanded at similar points in their tenure. This strategic shift appears to reflect Disney's growing confidence in the Marvel brand itself, rather than the individual actors portraying the characters. While this might make financial sense from a corporate perspective, it risks alienating the very talents who bring these beloved characters to life, as we've seen with Renner's public rebuke of what he perceived as an inadequate offer. The disparity in compensation among MCU actors has also drawn increasing attention from fans and industry observers. For example, while Robert Downey Jr. earned approximately $75 million for Avengers Endgame, Chris Evans reportedly made around $20 million, and Chadwick Boseman earned approximately $2 million for Black Panther, a film that grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide. These significant gaps raise questions about equity and compensation, particularly when considering factors such as screen time, character importance, and contribution to the franchise's overall success. It's worth noting that some MCU actors have publicly acknowledged the complex nature of these negotiations without expressing outright dissatisfaction. Benedict Cumberbatch, who portrays Doctor Strange, has spoken about the business aspects of joining such a massive franchise while maintaining that he feels fairly compensated. Similarly, Paul Bettany, Vision, has discussed the evolution of his contract from a voice role as Jarvis to a full character with increased compensation, illustrating the potential for positive growth within the system. However, as evidenced by Jeremy Renner's recent statements, not all actors feel that their compensation has evolved appropriately with their contribution to the franchise. His rejection of what he described as an insult offer for Hawkeye Season 2 suggests that despite Disney's immense resources, there remains a tension between maximizing profitability and ensuring talent feels valued appropriately. This tension becomes particularly pronounced when considering the overall financial success of the MCU. As of 2025, the franchise has generated over $30 billion in global box office revenue, not including merchandise sales, theme park attractions, and the substantial value added to Disney's streaming platform. Against this backdrop of extraordinary financial success, offers that actors perceive as inadequate can appear particularly egregious. But financial disputes aren't the only area where Disney and its Marvel stars have found themselves at odds. In recent years, several MCU actors have publicly expressed disagreement with Disney CEO Bob Iger on various issues, from labor disputes to creative decisions. These conflicts add another dimension to the complex relationship between the studio and its talent roster. One notable example is Tatiana Maslany, who portrayed She-Hulk in the Disney Plus series of the same name. During the 2023 writers and actors strikes, Maslany criticized Iger as being completely out of touch with the workers who create Disney's content. She particularly highlighted the wealth disparity, pointing out that Disney's prosperity was not adequately shared with crew, cast, and writers. Her comments were part of a broader industry backlash against Iger's statements during the labor disputes, which many perceived as dismissive of striking workers' concerns. Similarly, Sean Gunn, who plays Kraglin and serves as the on-set reference for Rocket in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, publicly criticized Iger's remarks during the strikes. Speaking from the picket lines, Gunn directly addressed the massive pay disparity within Disney, stating, "I think when Bob Iger talks about what a shame it is, he needs to remember that in the 1980s, CEOs like him made 30 times more than what the lowest worker was making. Now Bob Iger makes 400 times what his lowest worker is, and I think that's a Gee, shame, Bob." Even Iman Vellani, star of The Marvels, has indirectly expressed disagreement with Iger. When asked about her film's disappointing box office performance, Vellani shifted responsibility to the CEO, stating simply, "That's for Bob Iger," and emphasizing that the results had nothing to do with me. While less confrontational than the comments from Maslany or Gunn, Vellani's statement nonetheless reflected a willingness to publicly distance herself from corporate disappointments and place accountability at the executive level. These examples demonstrate that financial disputes like Renner's exist within a broader context of tensions between Disney leadership and Marvel talent. The relationship between the studio and its stars appears increasingly strained across multiple dimensions, from compensation to broader industry issues like labor rights and creative direction. Perhaps most tellingly, even Bob Iger himself has acknowledged shortcomings in Marvel's recent trajectory. The bigger picture: Disney CEO Bob Iger and the future of the MCU. Bob Iger, who returned as Disney's CEO in November 2022 after previously serving from 2005 to 2020, has been a transformative figure in the company's history. Under his initial tenure, Disney acquired Pixar 2006, Marvel Entertainment 2009, Lucasfilm 2012, and 21st Century Fox 2019, dramatically expanding the company's intellectual property portfolio and establishing its dominant position in the entertainment industry. Since his return in late 2022, Iger has focused on reorganizing Disney into three branches: Disney Entertainment, Parks, Experiences, and Products, and ESPN. His leadership has been particularly focused on transforming Disney's streaming business and restoring creativity at the company's core goals that directly impact Marvel Studios' operations and output. However, Iger's leadership style and public comments have occasionally put him at odds with talent, particularly during periods of industry unrest. A prime example of this tension emerged during the 2023 Writers Guild of America, WGA, and Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA, strikes, when Iger made comments that many industry professionals, including Marvel stars, found dismissive of legitimate concerns. In a particularly notable interview, Iger described the strikes as very disturbing and characterized the expectations of writers and actors as just not realistic. Let's examine his exact words.
Speaking of content, we're in the midst of a writer's strike, and very likely it would seem to have a actor's strike. How is that going to impact things, and what are your expectations there?
Well, I think it's very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the challenges we're facing and the recovery from COVID, which is ongoing. It's not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add to that disruption.
And when directly asked if the writers and actors were not being realistic, Iger responded affirmatively.
So they're not being realistic?
No, they're not.
Why not?
I can't answer that question. I respect their right and their desire to get as much as they possibly can in compensation for their people. I completely respect that. I've been around long enough to understand that dynamic and to appreciate it. But you also have to be realistic about the business environment and what this business can deliver.
These comments sparked immediate backlash from many in the entertainment industry, including several Marvel stars. As mentioned earlier, Tatiana Maslany, who portrays She-Hulk, criticized Iger as completely out of touch with the workers who create Disney's content, while Sean Gunn highlighted the 400-to-1 pay disparity between Iger and Disney's lowest-paid workers. The strikes eventually concluded with new agreements that addressed many of the union's concerns, including protections against AI usage and improved streaming residuals. However, Iger's comments during this period created lasting tension between Disney leadership and the creative community, including many Marvel actors who participated in the strikes. This backdrop of labor disputes provides important context for understanding Jeremy Renner's salary negotiation. While Renner's situation predates the 2023 strikes, it reflects similar concerns about fair compensation in an evolving entertainment, a landscape. Renner specifically pointed to Disney's penny pinchers rather than Marvel Studios as the source of his frustration, suggesting that financial decisions at the corporate level are creating friction with talent. Beyond labor disputes, Iger has also made comments about Marvel's content strategy that have raised eyebrows among fans and industry observers. In December 2023, he suggested that the substance of MCU stories was partly to blame for box office struggles, particularly emphasizing what he perceived as too much focus on messages rather than entertainment. These comments drew criticism from creative figures like Peter Ramsey, co-director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, who defended the Marvels against Iger's implications. Fan discussions on platforms like Reddit also pushed back against Iger's framing, with many arguing that quality storytelling rather than ideological messaging was the primary concern for audiences. More recently, in February 2024, Iger outlined a plan to focus on larger MCU franchises as a strategy to save the superhero universe, indicating a potential shift toward more established characters and properties. This direction might have implications for newer characters and more experimental projects, potentially affecting the MCU's diversity of storytelling. Against this backdrop of strategic shifts and public statements, Disney's offer to Jeremy Renner takes on additional significance. Offering half the previous salary to an original Avenger could be interpreted as part of a broader strategy to reduce talent costs, particularly for Disney Plus productions. If true, this would align with reports that Marvel has been aiming to decrease tentpole actor salaries in Phase 4 and beyond. But while cost control might make sense from a pure business perspective, it risks alienating the very talent that has made the MCU successful. Fan reactions to Renner's revelation have been overwhelmingly supportive of the actor, with many expressing disappointment in Disney's approach. Comments on social media posts reporting the dispute show strong sentiment in Renner's favor, with users urging Disney to pay that man his money and criticizing the studio for what they perceive as disrespect toward an original Avenger. The timing of the offer is particularly notable given Renner's recovery from his near-fatal accident. Many fans have pointed out that offering a reduced salary to an actor who has endured significant physical trauma seems especially tone-deaf. As one ex-user commented, disappointing that Disney won't pay an OG Avenger to return, especially after what he's gone through to get back to acting. This brings us to the crucial question: what could these disputes mean for the future of the MCU? Several potential impacts are worth considering. First, there's the immediate question of Hawkeye's future in the franchise. If Jeremy Renner permanently steps away due to compensation disagreements, the most likely scenario would see Kate Bishop, Haley Steinfeld, continuing the Hawkeye legacy. The Disney Plus series already established her as Clint Barton's protege, creating a natural transition. Marvel could focus on developing new storylines for Kate, possibly incorporating her into projects like Young Avengers, which has been rumored to be in development. Such a transition would align with Marvel's broader strategy of introducing younger heroes and passing mantles to new characters, as seen with Anthony Mackie taking over as Captain America from Chris Evans. However, Renner's departure would unquestionably represent a significant loss for the franchise, given his long tenure and the fan attachment to his portrayal. If Renner were to leave, Marvel would miss his experience and depth as an actor who has portrayed Hawkeye for over a decade. His depiction of Clint Barton as a relatable, grounded hero with a family life has added valuable contrast to the more fantastical elements of the MCU. Additionally, his established chemistry with other Avengers actors has contributed significantly to the ensemble dynamic that has been central to the franchise's success. However, there are indications that despite the Hawkeye series dispute, Renner may still be involved in other MCU projects. As mentioned earlier, he has hinted at appearing in Avengers Doomsday, scheduled for release on May 1st, 2026. This suggests that while television negotiations have reached an impasse, his character might continue to appear in theatrical releases. Beyond the specific issue of Hawkeye's future, these disputes highlight broader challenges facing the MCU as it navigates its second decade. The franchise is currently in a period of transition, with many original stars having departed or taking on reduced roles. This creates a delicate balance between honoring legacy characters and establishing new ones, a balance that could be disrupted by contentious salary negotiations with veteran actors. For more content like this, click on the videos showing on your screen now.